Remember, everybody, anytime you do miss class, I do try to remember to make recordings each week so you can go back and see what we discussed. Make sure you don't miss anything, any announcements or anything important that you need to know. And we might have even covered some material. So be sure and go back and check in. I post those in Google Classroom, the recordings from each week from any class meetings that we have. So that is there whenever you need it. Even if you were here and want to go back and review recordings, go ahead and do that. This week is test week. We are up to our first module test here. We're at the end of module 1. Most everyone is ready for that and has completed all the assignments in there. There's still a few people that have not completed all the module 1 assignments, so certainly not ready for the test. With that, 1.07 is a practice test. So you need to take the practice test to see if you are ready for the test, because the practice test simulates the test. It has similar type problems. The test does have 2 parts. It has part 1, which is multiple choice, part 2, which you have to do more of the work. You got to show all of your work, and it'll have the big box you type in there. So I think there's only a couple of questions on the open response part. Let me look real quick. I don't remember. Yes, 2 questions. 2 questions on the open response. So let's see how many questions are on the multiple choice. There are 10. So 10 multiple choice and 2 open response for our first module test. And like I said, the practice test will be before that. So this week I hope to have it today. I think I can get it done today. I take the practice test and I will work all of the problems and record that. I'll do that each time that we have that practice test before the test. And that way, if you're taking the practice test and you get stuck or you're missing something, and you're like, okay, why is that wrong? Because it'll grade it for you. It's multiple choice. And you don't understand why you missed it. And you go back and you look at the lesson, you still don't know how you missed it. You can go see the video and see where I worked the problem. Maybe the exact same problem, maybe a different one. It has a bank of questions that it pulls from. So it might be the same question that I'm doing, or one that's very, very similar, just with a different equation or something. And you can look and see how I work that problem. And that way, my explanation hopefully will help you understand it. If you still don't understand it after you watch how I work it, get with me before you take the test. Say, Mr. Brock, I'm number 8 is confusing. I don't get it at all. And then we'll get together online, and I'll pull up the camera and we'll go over it and help you understand what you don't get. So let me just show you the practice test here this morning. Like I said, I will be working this whole test today, I hope, and have that video up as soon as I can. So that way you'll have that available as a resource for you. All right. I'm not going to work all these now. I'm just going to kind of show you what we have. Given the equation, here's an equation. Which order of operations solves for x? So it just asks you the order of operations. What do you do first with that? Here's 2 people working an equation, trying to solve that. And which one made the mistake? They came up with 2 different answers, and they had the exact same equations. So somebody made a mistake. And so you look through there and figure out who messed that up. Another order of operations wants to know what equation would you use? Tells you the little word problem, and you have to figure out which one of these equations mimics and models this situation, and how much do they make after 6 hours. So you have 2 parts to that question. So All of those are different, so that should help if you can figure out how much he makes. That should help you know which equation it is also. Solve f of g of x when x equals 3. F of x, g of x, solve f of g of x when x equals 2. G of f of x, or g of x equals this. So I'll be going through all of this. If you have questions on any of these, I can go over them here in class as well. But I'm finding the inverse of problems here. So the inverse, what's the value of the y-intercept with this graph right here, which means you need to rearrange that into a y equals. If you want slope-intercept form, you need to have it slope-intercept form to tell what the intercept is, because this is standard form, which will not tell you the y-intercept. Let's see. This gives you an equation that models this table and asks you what the 117 represents in that equation. What restrictions should be made to the domain? So giving you a situation, because depending on a life-like situation, we don't always have the negative infinity to infinity domain and different things. What restrictions should be made to the range up here? To which graph does this point belong? So in other words, this point right here is, if you graph these four, one of them would go through the point 2, 4. Which one? You can do that by graphing. You can do that by substituting the 2 and the 4 in there. If I put the 4 in for y and the 2 in for x, because that's the x position, that should be a true statement. So you can test that by substituting. Which the equation in the line passed through this point? Again, y equals 1, y equals 14, x equals 1, x equals 14. Which one would pass through the point 1 and 14? And it wants to know a horizontal line, because there's more than one of these that would go through that point. Horizontal. Given a point and a slope, find y when x is 21. So different problems there. What's the standard form of this equation? Standard form, right? So there's different forms listed here. I see slope-intercept form. I see point-slope form. I see standard form. Which one of those is standard form for this actual line? What's the slope-intercept form of the line that passes through this point? So you got to do some manipulation of the equation there. You have the points. You can calculate the slope. You can write it in point slope, and then you have to change it to slope-intercept. So all skills that we need to be able to do. There's another one just like that one, but this one wants to know in the point slope form. This gives you the points. Doesn't give you the slope. You have to calculate it and figure out which one of those. Here's two functions. One gives you the equation, one gives you the graph, and wants to know what you can determine. So then you have the comparison statements at the bottom. What can you determine about the y-intercepts of this equation and this graph? It gives it one, a table. One's an equation, one's a table, and you have to compare the y-intercepts. Here's a little word problem and a table. What can you determine about their slopes? So comparing them. So comparing functions in two different representations. Here is a graph and a table. What can you compare about their y-intercepts? And then the last two problems are, see, I had this one printed on another page. I cut it off and taped it on here. So I'd have all four of them on the same page. So this up here wants to know which graph represents his car collection. It describes his car collection up here. So you got to figure out which one of these four graphs represents that situation. And this one's the same type of problem here. Which one of these graphs models this situation up here? So that is the practice test. So it looks like there's 27 problems. So it's much longer than the actual test. Like we looked at the test and said, it's only 10 multiple choice and the 2 open response. So the practice test gives you more practice than you need for the test even. So this week, what to do is you take the practice test and then take the module 1 test. And then next week we'll be starting module 2. So if you have trouble, like I say, take the practice test, make sure you understand it is there to help you know if you're ready, right? Because if you take the practice test and you do very poorly, you don't want to jump straight into the test. You need to go back and see what you missed. Each one of those problems tells you which lesson it came from. It'll have in parentheses up there, this came from the first lesson, this came from the third lesson, 0103, 0101, whatever it come from. And you can go back and look at that lesson. Again, you'll have my video that I'm working these that you'll be able to go through also. So um, we have had a evidence of learning grade. We had the quiz. All right. So if you didn't do well in the quiz, it does allow a second attempt. So go back and see what you missed. If you have questions on it, get with me. You can take it again if you didn't do well the first time. So it does allow 2 attempts on that quiz. And then you've had all the other assignments. Now, the other assignments are homework practice grades, but they're still assignments. So you need to do those in order to help you prepare for this test too. So anyone who has not caught up, and some of you have not caught up yet and got all of those assignments done, be sure and get those caught up and do that. So, but most of you have done well and have those caught up. There's just a few people that have not completed everything up to this point. So attendance for, let's see, Friday this week, because we're in a BABA week with the holiday. So attendance for Friday. If you've got the quiz done and passed it, done okay on the quiz, and if you've got all your assignments in, then you're not required to be here. If you haven't done all your assignments, then I'm counting you as required to be here. If you're behind, so you need to come to class and you need to get some things caught up. So 2 different categories right now. If you're over 70 and got everything turned in, great. But if you don't have the quiz done or don't have all your assignments done, then you need to be here on Friday. So you have until Friday to get that done if you're behind. Otherwise, you're just ready for the test this week. So take your time on that. Do the practice test. I will not keep you anymore this morning. I've told you everything you need to know for the week. No new material this week, just testing on what we got. So I will see some of you on Friday, perhaps. Otherwise, have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Let's get out of here. Word to your multiples. Math, baby.